He Who Wanders, A Tale of Endless Pursuit and Fragile Sanity. Part 2. I Miss the Scorching Wind of Andalusia. Borges. The Borges. I idolized him when I was in college. Many did, but I was different. It was 1961. I was an average lazy learner at the Universidad Laboral de Córdoba, floating around from one semester to another with barely passable grades. I had very few friends and almost no interests. One could say that I had an early form of an identity crisis. Besides chugging anisado, my only other passion was literature, Latin American literature. Borges and Neruda were at the forefront. One could only imagine my excitement when I saw a pamphlet hanging on the wall of the literature faculty. Spaces were limited. But who cared? It was the man himself, Jorge Luis Borges, coming to give us a lecture followed by an open panel of questions. Like a maniac, I rushed to the auditorium hours before the lecture. I was the first in line, and when the doors opened, I got the front row seat. The auditorium was packed with drooling chins of young self-proclaimed prodigies, awaiting the arrival of the Great One. And there he was, the blind lord of literature, walking upright onto the stage with a cane and his loyal assistant right by his side. Standing ovation. He nodded and made a, "Thank you, please be seated" gesture. Then he began. The lecture was dedicated to Spanish writers. I cannot distinctly recall if it was Cervantes or de Vega. It truly made no difference. Somehow, I managed to sit through his entire lecture, but my mind was elsewhere. I was waiting for the Q&A session. I had a question to ask. When the time came, I was the first to raise my hand. The assistant pointed at me, and I stood up. "Señor Borges, what is your opinion on the concept of time in relation to human mortality?" I asked, my voice trembling. Borges smiled faintly. "Time is the substance from which I am made," he began. "Time is a river which carries me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger that devours me, but I am the tiger. It is a fire that consumes me, but I am the fire." The auditorium was silent, hanging on his every word. "We are all prisoners of time," he continued. "Yet, within its constraints, we find our freedom. Mortality gives meaning to our existence, and in understanding our temporal nature, we grasp the eternal." His words resonated deeply within me, stirring thoughts and emotions I had not previously contemplated. After the lecture, I lingered in the auditorium, hoping for a chance to speak with him personally. As the crowd dispersed, I noticed Borges sitting alone, his assistant momentarily away. Summoning my courage, I approached him. "Señor Borges," I said softly. He turned his head slightly, acknowledging my presence. "Yes? Your lecture was enlightening. I have always been fascinated by your exploration of time and existence." "Thank you," he replied. "It is a subject that occupies much of my thoughts." We spoke for several minutes, delving into philosophical discussions that left me both intrigued and contemplative. As I left the auditorium that evening, I felt a profound connection to Borges's ideas, unaware of how deeply they would intertwine with my own life and follow and like. For more clips like this.